What's up, you guys? Void here, coming back at you all with another Commander deck tech video for a patron of mine. Doing yet another one for Knight's Oath. Had a request, since I haven't done too many of these deck techs with Commander partners, that I do one, and he preferred that I tried to do one with Ravos Soul Tender, which is probably one of the better ones. But I'm going to be using both Ravos Soul Tender and Tana the Blood Sower. I think these two complement each other pretty well, and in these colors you can get out a lot of creatures, a lot of creature tokens, and get out a pretty decent sized team, which is what you want to do. Ravos does give all of your other creatures +1/+1 and Anthem. He's a 2/2 flyer, so he is pretty susceptible to a lot of removal, but at the beginning of your upkeep, you get to return a target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, which is decent. It's really good. You get to get those creatures back all over again, allows you to go to the late game a lot easier. Returning cards to your hand is always underrated. And Tana the Blood Sower is a 2/2 trampler in Gruul colors, green, red. Ravos is black, white, so it's going to be a 4-color deck. Whenever she deals combat damage to a player, you create that many 1/1 green sapperling creature tokens. The idea here, what we want to do is give our creatures anthems. This is including Tana. We want to pump her up a little bit so that we can get more of these sapperling tokens. Having Ravos out there is going to give a +1/+1 anthem to all of our tokens. And we want to pair that up with some good overrun effects as well. That's going to be the primary win con for this deck. As far as our land base goes, we want to keep it pretty simple, 4-color mana fixing. But we do play a Gavany Township. Has an activated ability of 4 mana. We could tap it to put a +1/+1 counter on each creature we control. So that is pretty nice. Goes along really well with the anthems. And then we do have a Skull Clamp, which is just mandatory for any deck that's running tokens. The card draw is just too good to give up. Soul Ring, pretty basic. Felwar Stone, again, pretty good in 4 colors. Anything where you have a ton of mana fixing that you need, Felwar Stone's likely going to get it to you from your opponents. Ashnod's Altar, we do have a lot of tokens. Getting easy mana that way is always nice. Chromatic Lantern, going to give us all the mana fixing that we need, making all of our lands basically command towers for all intents and purposes. And being able to tap for mana itself is awesome. We have a Commander Sphere, can tap to add 1 mana of any color, and it can sack itself to draw us a card. And the last artifact we have is an Eldrazi Monument. We have some anthems in here. This is a pretty good one. Also going to give our creatures flying and indestructible. We do have to sacrifice a creature at our upkeep, so not that big of a deal. Tana's going to give us some more sapperlings, so that shouldn't be a problem. And we're going to have a pretty good board state. Moving on to our creatures, we have 29 of them, which is a pretty decent number. We also have our 2 commanders, so keep that in mind. We should have a pretty decent creature presence between those two. Birds of Paradise. This is a 4-color deck. I shouldn't really have to explain it. Blood Artist. Whenever creature dies, we're going to have a player lose a life and we're going to gain a life. Pretty awesome in a deck where we can get a lot of creatures out there if someone wants to board wipe. They have to consider this as being a threat. Sakura Tribe Elder with Ravos. This isn't the worst thing that you could get back to your hand. Play it super easy and just keep sacking it for more mana. If you're desperate, you can go into the late game that way. Champion of Lambholt, again, a lot of creatures. Shouldn't be difficult to get some +1/+1 counters on her and then make all of our creatures unblockable. That is really awesome. Eternal Witness, a pretty good staple in Commander just for green in general. Getting any card back from our graveyard to our hand is fantastic. Mentor of the Meek, a lot of token creatures, a lot of creatures power 2 or less are going to be entering the battlefield. So whenever you can get some decent card draw like this, you should probably go for it. And then we have a Mirror Entity, which is always nice. Whenever you can get a huge team out there, doesn't matter if it's 1/1 or not, Mirror Entity is going to make them massive, and all you'd really have to do is just have enough mana to do it. So whatever you really need. We have some better options that are going to overrun and give trample, but that is still pretty sweet. Then we have Tana the Weaver, going to give us another way to draw cards. You do have to attack multiple opponents to get the most out of it, but I don't know, I think she's still worth it. Brutal Horde Chief is pretty sweet. Whenever creature you control attacks, defending player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. And then you can pay 5 mana to have creatures your opponents control block this turn if able, and then you get to choose how those creatures block. So it's a pretty easy way to just beat down one opponent pretty aggressively, because all you really have to do is just have all of your opponent's creatures block maybe your worst creature, and the rest of them are just going to swing in uncontested, dealing as much damage as you want to pretty easily. I love this card. Fantastic for this deck. Creekwood Liege, gonna go along with the theme of Anthems, gonna give our black creatures +1/+1, gonna give our green creatures +1/+1. Both of our commanders are gonna get +1/+1, and at the beginning of our upkeep, we get a 1/1 black and green worm creature token, which is pretty much gonna be a 3/3 as long as Creekwood Liege is also on the battlefield. That is pretty awesome. Then we have Dune Brood Nephilim, which is really cool because it's kind of like Tana before Tana. Whenever Dune Brood deals combat damage to a player, we get a colorless 1/1 sand creature token into play for each land we control. So it's going to give us way more tokens than Tana, likely because we only really have to deal combat damage with it, and we get a ton of them. It doesn't really have to be dependent on its power, which I think is a lot easier to give it something like flying, swing at someone when they don't have any blockers, and then just get a ton of tokens that way. Still pretty awesome. Iroa's God of Victory, gonna give our creatures a pseudo menace type ability and prevent all damage that's gonna be dealt to them as long as they're attacking. I think that's pretty sweet. But as always, the gods are awesome because they're indestructible enchantments at the very worst. And then when they do become creatures, they're just gonna block for you, they're gonna attack for you all day. Really awesome cards. And we also play Perforos for a very similar reason. Awesome just to have it out there as an enchantment, indestructible, but we're gonna get a lot of creatures entering the battlefield off of Tana, off of other ETBs, stuff like that. We're gonna get a lot of damage spread around to our opponents. Can't really go wrong with a good old Perforos. Solemn Simulacrum, we are playing 4 colors. Mana fixing isn't always a guarantee, so you might as well play a good consistency card like that. Felonite Hermit. All of our Saprolings are going to get an Anthem +1/+1. Does have Morph, but I kind of hate Morph, not really relevant. However, with Felonite Hermit, it does technically matter because when she's turned face up, you get 4 1/1 green Saproling creature tokens, so there is an incentive to take advantage of her Morph. Other than that, though, Morph is something I typically like to avoid. Angel of Invention, yet again, another Anthem. You guys know I love my Anthems. She's going to get it done here. We're either going to fabricate, get 2 of those servo tokens. Those are going to get an Anthem, so we can get more power out there. Or we're just going to keep +1/+1 counters on her. Either way, still a fantastic creature. Going to support the team out pretty well. Ankle Shanker is awesome. I love this card. Haste, so he's going to attack as soon as you get him out there. Whenever he attacks, creatures you control gain first strike and death touch until end of turn. In case you don't understand what that means, unless your opponents have indestructible creatures or creatures that also have first strike that can get over yours, pretty much anything that touches these creatures are going to die. They deal combat damage first. Death touch is going to kill them before they even have the chance to deal combat damage to your creatures. So even if you're giving tokens, first strike and death touch, that is fantastic. Gahiji Honored One, again, kind of like an Anthem. Whenever your creatures are going to be attacking an opponent or a planeswalker your opponent's control, those creatures are going to be getting +2/+0 until end of turn. So it's kind of like an Anthem, but for power, and it is +2 power, so it's even better. Cool thing is that it also works for your other opponent's creatures whenever they attack one of your other opponents, so there's a little bit of an incentive there. Gave Guru of Spores, we have some Saproling synergy, so he's kind of useful for that reason, but not really bad. You could always remove a +1/+1 counter from either him or someone else that has a +1/+1 counter on your team, and get some more token power. Never really a bad thing. Michaeloth, even better because the Devourer can get out of hand. If you have a lot of tokens, you decide to Devour and put those +1/+1 counters on Michaeloth, you're going to be getting a whole bunch of Saproling tokens on your upkeep, equal to how many +1/+1 counters are on Michaeloth. Grave Titan, going to give you 2/2/2 zombies on ETB and on attack. Really awesome. Pretty simple creature, but is going to put a lot of work in. Rith the Awakener, yet again another cool Saproling synergy. Whenever he deals combat damage to a player, you get to pay 3 mana, and if you do, you have to choose a color, and however many permanents are on the battlefield that share that color, you get to put a 1/1 Saproling creature token into play for however many permanents do. So that's a pretty awesome synergy. You get some more tokens that way. It is dependent on the damage trigger, so keep that in mind. Sun Titan, yet again, the Titans are just awesome all around. This one is no different. Gonna give you some stuff from your graveyard, pretty awesome. Thunderfoot Baloth, like I said before, Anthems are awesome. Lieutenant's even easier in this deck because we have 2 different commanders to choose from, so even if one gets more expensive, we likely have the other one that we can depend on. And +2/+2 and trample to your other creatures is pretty sweet. Avenger of Zendikar, gonna get us a lot of tokens, and those plant tokens are gonna get +1/+1 counters for landfall. That is nice. Kind of like an Anthem for your plant tokens, so that's noteworthy. Elish Norn, like I said before, there is an emphasis on Anthems. She is one of the best cards to put in this type of deck. Gonna shrink our opponent's creatures, gonna make our tokens massive by comparison, so she's nothing but good for us. Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight, again, we're gonna have a huge team. Overrun effects, Anthems are gonna be incredible in combination with her. Dealing double damage to our opponents, having our opponents half their damage to us is fantastic. And obviously you saw this coming, Craterhoof Behemoth. We do have a lot of tokens to choose from. Getting insane power and toughness boosts as well as trample for those creatures is going to be fantastic. Also has haste himself, so you're likely going to knock just about everybody out of the game. And then we have a Stonehoof Chieftain to wrap up the creatures. Trample Indestructible. Whenever another creature we control attacks, it's going to gain Trample and Indestructible as well until end of turn. So really cool creatures, going to make combat even easier for us. We do have one Planeswalker in Elspeth Sun's Champion. This is a token synergy deck. Getting more tokens out there is going to make it easier for us to swing in with a full team. Also has a pretty cool minus where we can board wipe, kind of like a Smite the Monstrous for all other creatures. It's going to clear the board, make it easier for our little tokens to get by. And then our ult is just awesome. Yet another cool Anthem, +2/+2 and flying for all of our creatures. Really underrated Planeswalker. As far as our enchantments go, we have some good consistency ones. 12 of them. We have Cryptolith Right, gonna basically make all of our creatures Birds of Paradise. Tokens, being able to tap for 1 mana of any color. This is just a 2 mana enchantment. That's just ridiculous. Necrogenesis, really cool graveyard hate, but it's also gonna give us a 1/1 green Saproling creature token. Very underrated when you can hate on those niche decks, or just decks in general that love the graveyard. Sylvan Library, good consistency in green. Aura Shards, can't really beat this card. If you're playing Celestia Colors and you have any creatures at all, you should probably consider this card. But since we play a ton of tokens, it's an auto-include. It's just ridiculous. Being able to destroy artifacts and enchantments on creature ETBs is ridiculous. Beastmaster Ascension, kind of yet another Anthem. Gonna give +5/+5. Whenever we have 7 or more quest counters on it, it gets a quest counter whenever a creature we control attacks. Again, we have a ton of creatures that we can get on the battlefield. First time we swing is likely going to be the first time we trigger it, and we're going to get the +5/+5 Anthem for all of our creatures and likely win the game. Anointed Procession and Parallel Lives are basically the same card. Effects creating 1 or more tokens under your control are going to double that number. Pretty ridiculous. Assemble the Legion. If left alone, this is going to get you even more little red-white soldier creature tokens, and that muster counter is going to just double, and you're going to get more of those soldier tokens each one of your upkeeps. Never a bad thing. Pretty good as a defensive card as well. Cathar's Crusade. If you have anything that can get a huge number of creatures out there, like an Avenger of Zendikar, your whole team's just going to get massive. Whole bunch of +1/+1 counters. Mirari's Wake. Pretty cool in a 4-color deck. Going to get us awesome mana fixing as well as going to be doubling our mana. All of our creatures are also going to get an Anthem, so I love this card for that reason, that it's going to fit in with the rest of the deck. Collective Blessing is a 6 mana, but a really cool Anthem. Gonna give all of our creatures +3/+3. The whole theme of the deck is just giving all of our creatures an Anthem, so playing a whole bunch of those cards is just awesome. True Conviction. Creatures we control have double strike and lifelink. Not an Anthem technically, but giving those 2 good keywords is gonna help us win the game a lot easier. And we do have 6 sorceries and 6 instants. Our sorceries are Farseek, Rampant Growth, Cultivate, Kodama's Reach. All 4 of those are gonna help us get the lands that we need. They're all pretty sweet. Mana fixing is important, but you also want to limit the number of lands that you draw into, so that's a pretty cool thing as well. Merciless Eviction. If you're going to choose a board wipe in 4 colors, this is honestly one of the better ones you can go with. Not going to require 2 of any one color. Super easy to depend on. Going to exile whatever problem permanents are on the battlefield. Tooth and Nail. Can't really complain about this card. All you really need to do is just search up a Craterhoof Behemoth, maybe a Gisela Blade of Gold Knight, and you have the win. Get both of those out there. If you're desperate for numbers, numbers, you could also get Avenger of Zendikar and get more numbers that way. Or if you really want to, you could search up both Perforos, God of the Forge, and Avenger of Zendikar, and then try to win the game that way. So there's a bunch of different ways you can win with Tooth and Nail. Super expensive if you choose to entwine it, but 9 mana shouldn't be too hard for this deck. Our instants are Swords to Plowshare is going to be awesome removal. Pretty basic, just 1 white mana, can't really beat it. Artifact Mutation and Aura Mutation. Artifact Mutation is going to deal with artifacts. When that artifact is destroyed, you get to create X 1/1 green Saproling creature tokens, where X is that artifact's converted mana cost. The same thing is going to happen with Aura Mutation, but instead of artifacts, it's going to work for enchantments. So you have awesome removal for those 2 different cards. Very narrow in terms of what they can get rid of, but once you do get rid of them, you do get awesome Saproling creature tokens that are going to support your team. So there is a bit of a trade-off there. Anguished Unmaking, again in a 4-color deck, you don't necessarily have the best mana fixing, so if you can avoid double of the same color, that's good. So having just 1 white and 1 black is pretty sweet. 3 mana instant, gonna exile a non-land permanent that's causing you the most problems. Chord of Calling, yet again another good creature tutor, not unlike Tooth and Nail, gonna pretty much win you the game if you get out the right creature, which is most of the time going to be a Craterhoof Behemoth. You get that out, the rest of your team is going to get massive. Instant Speed, this is even better because you don't have to get Craterhoof Behemoth. You could get a really good creature you're desperate for and just do that on your opponent's end step. That way you have your turn to attack with it. Pretty nice. And then we do wrap up this entire deck tech with a Sylvan Reclamation. I absolutely love this card. Basic land cycling, super underrated. You never know when you might be desperate for it. Exile up to 2 target artifacts and or enchantments. Kind of like Return to Dust, but better because it doesn't have any restriction on timing. So you do get to always exile up to 2 target artifacts and or enchantments. So that's going to do it for this deck. I really enjoyed making this. Just the combination of tokens and anthems, I've always been a big fan of that. I loved making a deck tech for him. Knight's Oath requested, I believe the first deck tech he requested was an Elish Norn deck tech, which did have a very similar playstyle, worked with anthems. I called that deck Anthem City because it just had so many anthems. This one isn't that different. There's a lot of anthems in green, a lot of anthems in white, so taking advantage of all of those is pretty awesome. But anyway, hope you enjoyed it, Knight's Oath. I hope the rest of you guys enjoyed it. Feel free to leave any suggestions in the comments section. But as always, you guys have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next video.